is race, or is the race real? So I'll turn it over to Ginny to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jenny Wilson. And like Oscar said, we're working on this project, trying to get it complete. Um, Discussing these topics, is race real, and myths, and situations that prove the myths wrong. Um, I have chosen myth one to, because we humans look different, we have to be grouped together into a race category. Um, so my first thing that proves that myth wrong is, science has proven numerous times, despite our different skin tones, religious beliefs, language, or genetics, our genetics are the same. Another one is most variation is within races, not between them. Another is there is not a single characteristic that distinguishes one race from another. Race is powerful social idea that gives people different access to better opportunities and resources. And race is a modern idea which came about to try and justify slavery. Um, I'm Caucasian and I live in North Carolina. And I just know for a fact my eyes are wide open to things that I see happening to folks that look different than I do. Such as even for jobs and things of that nature, you have to check a box of what your race is, and everything, of course, says equal opportunity employer. But if that was the case, why are we checking boxes?
I agree. I agree.
Just doesn't really make much sense. So I feel like, according to the research that we've done, we're all the same. And like science says, our genetics are the same, and the like other Caucasians could have different characteristics than I do.
Right, and they could potentially not be Caucasian. I wanted to jump in really quick, Jenny, and talk about the first fact that proved the myth wrong, where we started talking about despite our different skin tones. If you look at my skin tone, I'm definitely brown, but my heritage and my background is Hispanic. So my very first language that I ever learned was Spanish. Rice and beans is something that is major in my house and even for my children. But it's interesting that even in my own life that I've experienced it firsthand, where some individuals may mistake me and just categorize me due to my skin tone and say, okay, well, if you're not white or your skin isn't light, then you're considered black. But in my case, that's not correct, because I'm not black. I'm actually Hispanic. My ancestors are from South America in Colombia. Both of my parents were born in Colombia, and I was actually born here in the United States. So I'm also living proof that proves that myth wrong, that just because we look a certain type of way, it doesn't mean that we have to be categorized that way.
Right, I agree, Oscar. And I took that little quiz, the sorting quiz, and shamefully, I mean, you look at the picture and it gives you different groups that you think the people are, and I did terrible. I got 3 out of, I think it was 30, and not that I don't see that kind of stuff, but I know it exists.
Right.
But I just was like, dang, this is how people go about just looking at somebody and just putting them in a group that they don't have any clue
Where they're
that's
from.
the right group. We have to
Right.
have groups.
Right. And I took the same quiz, and I think I did worse than you did. I think I got 2 out of the 30. To me, and it's so sad to say, that all the Asians I categorized as Asians just because they looked Asian, but that wasn't their background. And there was one gentleman who was very light in complexion, and he was actually black. And I was like, wait, what? And then there was another individual who had it seemed like an afro. And I said, oh, afro. I automatically started to think, oh, afro, thick hair, they have to be black. But no, they weren't. So in essence, that was partially me stereotyping or putting someone into a category just by looking at them. So that website proved that there was a lot of different things we have to take into consideration when we think that we want to categorize someone without knowing.
Right, I agree. Um, I guess we could move on to your myth.
Sure. So myth number two, which is the one that I'd like to debunk, is that calling attention to race is a bad thing or frowned upon. And in some cases, it's been proven and it's been written, and I've seen it all over the What is Race website and also on social media, on CNN, in different places, that racism sometimes isn't really an issue. But there's so many things that are happening in this day and age that make us um, have to make us aware that race is still very much an issue. People say, "Oh no, I'm not racist," or "No, I'm not categorizing you," or "No," but in their own mind, they have their own perception, and their perception comes from what they've experienced in the past. So some of the facts that I chose for my myths were: how could it be that so many people, or so many meaning white folks or Caucasians, never thought about race when so many black people can't pass a single day without being reminded of it? There could very well be, let's take the situation that happened in California at the Starbucks, if you remember.
Yep.
Not too long ago, Caucasians may say, "Oh, race isn't an issue. We're not racist. Don't worry. You're not going to be treated a certain way." But then we have these two gentlemen who were apparently waiting for some friends at the Starbucks, and the manager, I believe, placed a phone call to the authorities, and the authorities arrived and started questioning them, handcuffed them. I mean, that was a first case example where racism is still very much a thing that needs to be talked about. Wouldn't you agree, Jenny?
I agree 100%. And I actually was talking with one of my coworkers today who happens to be African American lady, and we talked about, I might not understand, and I don't claim to understand that race is true, but
Hmm.
I don't know what it feels like, but I see it myself. How the interactions are with other people. So um, yeah, it's very real.
Very, very real. That's a word. Very, very real. Yeah. Another one of the myths that I chose were subtle forms of racism, tolerating an innocent joke or loaded racial assumptions, which is something that happens, and it has to happen with all races. It's really messed up to say. And I've heard it. For example, they say, "Oh, black people love their what is it, watermelon and fried chicken." Hispanics like myself were usually categorized as just Mexican. And whenever you categorize Hispanics, you think, "Oh, rice and beans," and that's it. And of course, if we were to think about the Asians, we would think, and we hear people say, "Oh yeah, they're Asians and they're fried rice, or their wonton soup, or their egg
Mhm.
rolls." So that's another example that racism is very real, and we're almost being conditioned to tolerate it. Some people, "Oh, I'm only joking, it's only a joke," but it's not something to joke about.
And
Um,
let me just interrupt real quick.
sure.
Like, some people will throw the N word around.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And if, just say that I was at a party,
Hmm.
this is just hypothetically, if I was at a party and I heard somebody say this, yeah, I'm Caucasian, they may be Caucasian,
Hmm.
but just because they said it, I'm offended. I
Mm.
don't have to be of a different skin tone to be offended to those type of things. I'm offended. I don't like it, and it happens, and I politely let the people know I'm offended. I don't need to talk to you. You don't need to be around me because I don't tolerate that type of speaking and behavior.
Right. I agree. I agree. That's the right way to look at it, because even me myself, it makes me uncomfortable when people do that as well at different parties or different locations. I remember one time I was at a barber shop and I had one of my friends um, who he was African American, and I don't remember the exact joke, but I remember them saying something about, "Man, it's because you're black." That's why you're treated that way. And they all started laughing. But for me, it rubbed me the wrong way. And I looked over at my friend and I could see it in his own eyes that he was trying to laugh along with everyone else, but I could tell that it made him uncomfortable. So, like you said, that's another example as to why racism is truly an issue. And
Yep.
that calling attention to it isn't a bad thing. On the flip side, we need more awareness. Another of the myths that I had was that people who go against affirmative action believe people should be judged on merit and only their merit, right? Merit meaning how well they do.
Hmm.
However, current businesses guarantee, and I quoted, that whites will be rewarded for their historical advantage, meaning that it's usually, and if we go back years and years back into our even constitution, slavery, all that kind of stuff, it was easier for a Caucasian to get a job, like you said earlier today, than it would be for a minority or someone from another race. And the fact that people aren't being treated equally, again, proves that racism is very much an issue. It's not something that we should be putting aside or looking past. And then
Absolutely.
lastly, sadly, many of the white or Caucasian people that have been interviewed or were interviewed according to the What is Race website argue that in this day and age, 2018, where we are at right now, that race is no longer an issue. However, they can't find a way to explain racial inequality. They can say, oh, you didn't get that job because you didn't work hard enough. But what if you have two individuals work hard equally, have the same type of education? How do you explain that a person being Caucasian may have gotten an advantage over someone that wasn't? Um, and again, so many, when I think about that, so many questions arise in my mind, and I start to think about, oh, wait, well, do employers then choose to go out to LinkedIn and see the profile picture? And then, depending on their profile picture, they start either giving someone an advantage or disadvantage. That's something that we don't know because,
Right.
according to society, race isn't an issue.
And I noticed, because I'm a member on LinkedIn also, I'm sure you are.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that a lot of people don't have a picture.
Ooh.
They just may have their like initials or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, maybe that's why. So people, if that's what they do, troll LinkedIn to see what a person looks like, whether they are going to try to reach out to them or offer them a job or what have you. They don't see a picture, so they don't know what the person
Right.
looks like.
Wow. That right there is eye-opening. I
I
didn't
even
think,
thought about changing mine just because, like,
and that might not be a bad idea. It might be something I consider in the future because I started to think about the possibility, but then now that you say that they actually look at the photo and potentially base their judgment on it, that tells me that again, racism is very much an issue.
mhm. And
It's unfortunate.
although, yeah, although of course we had, our first black president, and he, was reelected and all that, so office 8 years. I mean, that to me is something that I never thought would happen
Me
in
neither.
my time. I'm glad it did. I'm glad that I was part of that. Um, I wish it would continue. um, I hope it continues. But that right there was amazing. But although we had a black president for 8 years, doesn't mean that the issues of race aren't still there.
That,
You heard how they talked about him and just all kind of just terrible stuff. Why? Like,
right, unnecessarily.
mhm,
And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because unless you live it and experience it yourself, you have an idea of what it's like. And in your case, Jenny, which is amazing, which is awesome that racism in itself bothers you.
yes.
So that's an issue right there. But people like myself who actually have to live it and breathe it from time to time, walking by someone at a mall or walking by a car, people just locking their doors and things like that, it makes you feel uncomfortable. And the sad part is I have children just like you do, and I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it's funny because my 1-year-old, he's very fair skinned, more like my wife. You look at him, it's crazy because he has that curly blonde hair and he has really, really fair skin. And my 2-year-old son, he also has curly hair, but he's a couple of shades lighter than I am. So when they were born, and this is how this should be an eye opener right here. The moment that they were born, one of the first things that I looked at to make sure was what their skin color was going to be, because I didn't want to live life thinking that they may have to experience some of the things that I did throughout my childhood and even my adult life. And when I saw them and I saw that they weren't they weren't even a shade close to me, I thought to myself, thank you, God, I did my job. And I shouldn't have to feel that way, but
Right.
that's the way that society is now, saying that race isn't an issue, saying that, oh no, there's nothing wrong with that, or saying that oh, just because you look a certain way, you're considered that race, and that's absolutely wrong,
Yep.
absolutely wrong.
I agree. I just can just hope and pray that one day you think of all the people who did all the things like Martin Luther King and all those people, and here we are still.
Still
I mean,
years.
granted, I'm not gonna say it's still like segregation and all that stuff, but like
Right.
you watch TV, you hear things. It's like that might even be starting to come back. I don't want to live in that world. I really
Right.
don't. Um, and I mean, I love everyone, and we're all humans, and I don't. That's all I know.
Right. We're all human. We all have blood, the same blood inside, and our bones are all white, and we just look a little different on the outside, so we can't be categorized and put into a little box or say that that box doesn't exist.
And what's crazy, what just proves this whole thing that we should like on my topic that because we look different, we should be grouped in different categories. I work at the Blood Plasma Center, and people from all races can come in there, donate their plasma, and guess what? All the plasma gets mixed in the same vat to make the medications for the people who need it, just like whole blood donation. It doesn't matter. You could have this the same blood type that I have, and I could get your blood if I needed it. It's just crazy, and
Yeah.
it really is disheartening that it's 2018 and folks of color have to still feel the way that they do and be treated the way that they are by some people.
Right, right. And if we think, like you said, now 2018, if we go back and start thinking about the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and really, if we stop and think about what they're trying to say, is that they're trying to say racism exists.
Yep.
We matter. Just
Yep.
because my color is a certain way doesn't mean you have to treat me a certain type of way.
Yep.
And like you said, we can only hope that it gets better. It'll start with us and anyone
Yep.
else that we come in contact with, and continue to teach our children a certain type of way, not to care about color, but more about the person and who they are inside.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll evolve as a species and things will get better. But if they don't, um, it'll be because of us.
Yep. I agree. I agree with you. Um, do you have any more questions? Anything else that we want to discuss here?
No, I don't think there's anything else to discuss other than I would like to say that we equally worked on this project. Everything from the creation of the poster, Jenny took her portion of it. I took the second portion of it when I started talking about my myths. Meeting together, we've met over, I would say, what, four times,
Yep.
and via email, we've kept in contact for a couple of weeks now. As we know, life is crazy, and getting each other at the same time with our families, travel, because I've been out of town for work and you've been out of town for work. But I would say that we equally put in 100% effort, and no one person did more than the other.
Absolutely. And I want to say also, Oscar, that I appreciate, our understanding with one another, with our work, our travel, our families, and just, being patient with one another, working through that, getting all of our stuff done. I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. It takes two. So teamwork
Yeah.
makes the dream work.
That's right. So I'm gonna stop the broadcast.
Okay.